Mm.
Hello everyone, Vladyslav Novikov here, and joining me is Andriy Dobriansky, Director of Communication at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andriy, hello, how are you?
Hi, thank you for having me back on.
So, Zelensky just went to France and Macron is visiting China this week. So, is Ukraine trying to pressure Putin through China using Macron as a channel?
I think it's less about Ukraine trying to do this, but it's definitely something that Europe wants to do. I think one of the main points of discussion here in the United States after Congress had a long week and a half break, they're just returning this week, both Senate and the House, is the conversation is what exactly Europe is doing, because there's a lot of members of Congress who are questioning this deal that was proposed to Ukraine, that the deadline passed, and now there's other discussions happening both in Geneva, now in Florida. I think many members of Congress want to see what Europe does in response to this, meaning that they might not be on board with the president's plan and want to see what Europe does. Because in the end, whether Trump accomplishes something or not, the main question is how does Ukraine get integrated into Europe and the Union or NATO even further, and whether it's Ukraine talking with Europe directly or Europe trying to find other partners. We've seen that numerous countries are now thinking of buying weapon systems outside of the United States. So it's not necessarily the F-35s or other rocket systems. They're looking at European manufacturers. And as far as China goes, Europe has always been in this interesting place in between. So they've been okay with using Chinese Huawei chips. They've been okay with trading with China. For instance, Europe's car market is infinitely more open to China than the United States car market. So there are things that the United States will not do with China that Europe has always been okay with, and perhaps because of that trade relationship, Europe through Macron or other intermediaries think that they could have a better kind of influence on it. So I don't know if it's directly from Zelensky asking, but I think Europe does have exactly what you're talking about, some idea of how to influence the war from Russia's side, from the Chinese perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, we talk about these details later. My next question about that situation. The Crystal Clean Trump says there is a corruption scandal in Ukraine and it's very big problem for peace.
Yeah.
Great to hear that from a man wearing a Rolex, which of course has nothing to do with corruption.
No, no. Yes, I mean, this is possibly the most corrupt administration in United States history, possibly, given
Mhm.
the fact that not just he and his family business have increased their wealth by billions within a year of taking over the presidency, but also many members of an administration. One well-known voice who is very anti-Ukraine, David Sachs, was just featured in American newspapers over the weekend, of the fact that he does not have a paid position in the White House, and yet he himself has enriched himself incredibly through being a member of this administration. So, what you mentioned was the Rolex being a part of a Swiss delegation, where not only a Rolex and a gift for the Oval Office was given, but a gold bar was personally given to
Yeah,
President Trump. Uh, I
insane.
I have been mentioning in my American media appearances the fact that a United States senator received numerous gold bars from a foreign nation and was not asked to leave the Senate until the case was finished against him. So even during all of these allegations, the evidence that had come out, he stayed as a member of Senate, and this just happened in the last year that he was resigned, and then the next person took over for him in the state of New Jersey. This is very different than what's happening in Ukraine, and we need to underscore that for our friends in America that perhaps forget or want to paint Ukraine as a corrupt nation. What we saw here is even the allegation and the raid of somebody's home led to that person resigning, a presidential memorandum stating that this person is not in his role currently, and that not doesn't just go for one person; it goes for numerous people who were accused in the last 2 weeks of graft in Ukraine. This is the main difference between America and Ukraine. Ukraine is actually trying to prosecute and even a hint, an allegation is enough to have somebody relieved of their duties. Whereas in America, we do have members of Congress, members of Senate, and even the president accepting gifts openly, and they are staying in their position and not asking for an investigation. So I think actually Ukraine is doing a much better job at fighting corruption than many countries in the West.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, Putin just made Russia visa free for Chinese citizens, and somehow Trump would still rather talk about Zelensky and corruption than about that. Funny, isn't it?
Well, I think that it's very clear that Chinese citizens are going to be coming into Russia with or without visas. So
Yes.
he probably needed to at least put that on paper. Given how many military advisors, how many manufacturers are coming, how many workers are coming in, who knows how many visas were granted to the North Koreans if 20,000 of them are making Shahed drones in Russia. So I think this just demonstrates again that this is not just a Russian operation against Ukraine, but we have China working actively against the United States and the West and Ukraine in terms of disinformation online. They have now overtaken Russia as far as disinformation being spread around the world. And of course, I mentioned North Korea as well. We're talking about three states working in concert. And so even if President Trump is able to put a deal on the table, Putin is not stopping this war if that means disappointing his partners, North Korea and China. These countries rely on the steady income of Russia purchasing materials from them. This is the only economy that exists in Russia. If Russia were to stop this war, its economy would collapse, and neither of those countries would be happy with that.
But why Trump don't understand this coalition
Yeah.
between Russia and China is increasing. It's not new fact, and this fact about visa, uh, we see situation where China and Russia keeps going on
Yep.
together,
Mhm.
and Trump. Okay, no problem. I get out from Europe. I don't do nothing with Europe. My military, my force. No, no, no. It's not work. But China is a very bad for US. How it's work?
I think it's demonstrated throughout this administration in the United States, where numerous people have come in, many of which have not been in government before. Many, like Steve Witkoff, do not understand the areas that they're talking about, and they all have very big ideas. Some of them who have come into the Defense Department think that they can convince, through Donald Trump, both Russia and China to do things exactly the opposite of what they're doing, and they simply have an overinflated sense of confidence that this can happen. This has been the case with President Trump in his first administration, having a lot of confidence that he could start a trade war with China. He ended up losing that trade war. That same situation is happening now, where he is backing down from all of the tariffs that he put on China one by one. And yet, there are people in this administration who keep telling President Trump that he can convince China to go against its interest. He can convince Russia to go against its interest simply by talking to them. It's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, it has to do with people in the administration thinking that they know better and not having worked in government before.
Mhm. What about economic situation? I mean, global economic, because Bloomberg writers that the EU's economic outlook is now better than the US because Europe is more stable. How does it feel from US?
On the U.S. side, our economic forecasts keep going down and down, given the fact that we have put up trade barriers. Donald Trump is very insistent on going back to a system in the world that didn't exist in the 20th century. Even this, he wants an age of empires, so he wants spheres of influence. And another part of that is putting on international tariffs. This is something that stymied international trade. In fact, it was one of the reasons why the Americans held their revolution 250 years ago, because they were upset at the king levying tariffs and Americans not able to be participating in international trade. And so this is a key problem for America going forward. I think whoever the next president is in the United States will drastically cut tariffs if they're not cut already by the end of Donald Trump's term. There's simply a slowing down of the economy, and this goes back to basic economic principles of the formation of capitalism, and especially the writings of Adam Smith. The more barriers you have, the less of a market you have, and the smaller the market, the smaller wealth you generate. And what Donald Trump has done is not only put up international trade barriers, but he has done the other thing of shrinking the market, which is deporting people. This year will be the first year on record that the United States has had net net deportation. So less people coming in and more people leaving the United States for the first time in our history. That by itself also stymies the market. There's less people trading, less people earning money, less people participating in the market, and therefore the economy shrinks. So these are two long-standing principles, tariffs and deportation, that go against over hundreds of years of capitalism. And yet Donald Trump is persisting in trying to convince the American public that he knows the economy better than what has been done for over 100 years.
So meanwhile, Ukraine is being pushed towards signing a capitulation. And being here in Ukraine, in Kyiv, I can say the atmosphere is not good. It really feels like Ukraine may end up signing something that looks like a surrender.
Well, I mean, I think the administration in Bankova, in Kyiv, is making it very clear to the West, whether it's with Europe or it's with the White House, that the president of Ukraine does not decide what the borders of Ukraine are. Whatever international deal is reached, it cannot be that that Ukraine acknowledges occupation by force. That would not only stand against the Constitution, so there would have to be a national referendum, but also it would stand against international law. And we know that over 100 countries have voted repeatedly at the United Nations that they do not recognize it, because occupying or annexing territory by force stands against the United Nations Charter. So not only has Russia been condemned by it, but if you were to ratify this, I don't know what country would ratify this, what other countries would recognize this territory, because that would stand against their international recognition that is a part of their UN membership. It is also true that no country can be coerced into signing a deal, as Ukraine is clearly being pressured to sign this capitulation, especially the first version of capitulation that we saw, the first 28 points, which was clearly a Russian document. Signing a capitulation agreement under force is also against international law, against what was agreed to in Geneva over a century ago. And lastly, for the United States, we have laws dictating that we will never recognize occupied territory in Ukraine specifically. That has been the case for over 10 years in the United States, and every subsequent budget that has been issued by the United States has included that language to re-emphasize that we do not recognize occupied territory occupied by force, and that it is specific United States policy to help Ukraine in regaining that territory and stopping further advances. So this is what I feel that the Ukrainian diplomats who come to sit down at the table with Americans, they listen to the proposals and say, thank you very much. Here are all the laws you would have to break. Here are the different constitutions that you would have to change to recognize this occupation. And therefore, what are we doing here? Either we talk about something serious, which is what we're hearing from the negotiations, that Ukraine has said there are certain things that we can't discuss because you would have to break the law to do this. So there are things that you can discuss, which is the size of the army, etc., that they might want to agree to, because we understand that Ukraine is operating at a higher level of an army that they would have in peacetime. So whatever Ukraine can get along with the United States, I think they're doing, and it stands in sharp contrast to what Russia is doing with the United States, which is showing them that they don't care. Putin is putting out speeches that he's going to kill every last Ukrainian. Putin is attacking Ukraine every night. And this has to, at some point, resonate with the United States, pointing out Ukraine is ready for a deal. Russia is not. Why are you working with a side that doesn't want to make a deal?
But Zelensky said today that the talks in Florida were constructive. But Andriy, I have serious doubts. The information about those talks is very mixed. Do you have any insider insights?
No, although from the people I've been speaking to, I won't go further than what's been reported, which is the fact that a lot of those points that stand against international law or Ukrainian law or United States law, those apparently were not discussed or were not gone into in detail. So it's clear that moving forward, Ukraine is just pointing out these are the topics we can talk about. If you want to talk about these issues like capitulation, making Ukraine less of a country because the original 28 points said that Russia has a veto over certain things. That's not sovereignty. And when we hear Marco Rubio say that they're dedicated to Ukraine being a sovereign state, that means that Ukraine has full control of what its decisions are and are not beholden as a vassal state to another country.
Yesterday I spoke with a political scientist on air, and he told me there will be no peace on Ukraine's terms. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the issue here is that everybody who seems to be pushing for capitulation believes that there is, for some reason, no way to help Ukraine, even though we've helped them just very small. We haven't given them all the weapons, we haven't put troops on the ground, etc. Meanwhile, Russia has turned to two giant countries like China. They have used tens of thousands of North Korean troops and personnel, and for some reason, they believe that that source of help for Russia will last indefinitely. They believe that Russia has an infinite amount of people that they can throw into war, and for some reason, Ukraine does not. What happens in the end with any military conflict is it comes down to logistics and supplies. And what Ukraine has been doing very deftly, and this war, as you well know, talking to people in the front line, this is a completely different war than what we had even 9 months ago. This war in 2025 is a war where 80% of the people who are dying because of drone warfare, and the drone warfare and ballistic missile attacks. When you're talking about flamingos or ATACMS that have hit Russian territory, we're talking about a different war where Ukraine is actually taking the fight to attack Russia's supply lines. And if that's the case, then no military invading another country, whether you're Napoleon, whether you're the Nazis, whether you're Alexander the Great, no country can survive an offensive if your supply line is broken down and you can't resupply people.
Yeah. So, Andriy, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, informative and clear as always.
Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to our conversation, next hour conversation. And by the way, Andriy and I meet every Monday, so stay tuned for our interviews.
Thank you.